Hello, this is Nicole. Welcome to my channel. So here's what happened. A friend of mine came to me the other day with a problem. He has the Dark World board game, which normally contains a board, naturally, miniature figures, cards, and a castle. But in this case, the castle is missing. My friend came to me for advice on how to make a substitute so he can play the game with his kids. I thought, I have never built a castle. What a great opportunity. I said to him, don't worry, I've got this. I have never done it before. So I'm turning my atelier into a construction site. Let's build an epic castle. My friend gave me the board to check out the space where the castle should be and some leftovers from the original building. Some stairs, 3 doors, a gate, a big stone sword handle that is used to determine the turns of the players, stuff like that. I decided to keep the doors, the sword and the gate and get rid of everything else. I went online and found a few photos of the original castle to use as a reference, and I started the construction of the main body of the building using cardboard. My friend also informed me that this is no ordinary castle. It was made to host monsters. I decided not to follow exactly the original design. I am going to keep the main shape, but I also need to feel it as my own. So I'm making a few changes to the architectural design. I wanted to have more space, and since I can't change the perimeter of the building because it needs to fit in this specific space on the board, I am giving it more height.
Nice, but maybe a little more square footage. I want a lot of monsters here.
There will be a great gate at the back side of the castle, so I am using paper tape to draw the arch. It's a specialized technique. It's called grabbing and using whatever is in your hand's reach. Now there will be 3 stone stairs, one at the front and one on each side. I am making halfway through cuts to a piece of cardboard so steps will be formed when folding it. This technique is called playing the accordion. I am using hot silicone to the cuttings to maintain the shape of the steps, and here are my 3 staircases. I am gluing them on the main structure using again hot silicone, and I am closing all the openings with cardboard. Here we are, castle ready. Well, no, there is still a lot to be done. The doors were a challenge. I needed to find a way to attach them to the building, and I also want them to be functional, meaning to be able to open and close them. So I made improvised hinges out of balsa wood and placed them through the cardboard. After I stabilized them using hot silicone, I was very excited to see that they served their purpose perfectly. And now I have a functional door.
Looks good. Only monsters can get in?
I followed the same method for the other 2 doors, and the 3rd time, of course, I made a mistake with my calculation and ended up with a huge gap.
Mind the gap.
That's okay. I'll be able to fix it later. I am using a piece of XPS foam as the stand for this sword handle looking prop. This thing has to be able to go in and out of its stand for the needs of the game, and for that reason it has a knob at its base. As XPS foam is kind of soft material, I decided to build a wooden socket that will hold this prop in place. After I broke my first popsicle stick using my micromotor in full power, I reduced the rotations and the second try was a success.
Well done!
I glued the wooden socket to the XPS foam and the stand was ready. Time to craft the stones that will cover the whole construction. Once again, I am using XPS foam. That was a long procedure, but strangely enough, I enjoyed it. And after some time of cutting and cutting and cutting a little more, I ended up with a bowl full of tiny pieces of XPS foam. Now, it's one thing having a bowl full of tiny pieces of XPS foam and another having a bowl of tiny pieces of XPS foam that looked like rocks. So I'm making a cocktail using some metallic objects in order to deform the shape of my XPS pieces and make them look a little more natural. Perfect drink. Egg carton alternatives. This castle will have two beautiful egg-related pillars. 2 more steps and I finally reached the point where I could start building. Working on details. I used toothpicks to mate the bars on this opening, which was there at the original design of the castle, and moved on to a little addition of my own. I decided to place an arch on top of the front gate. Since this is the main entrance, it feels proper to be a little more fancy than the others. For the steps and the floor, I decided to use a different material, similar to egg carton. It has this beautiful, almost organic texture, and I think it's perfect to simulate paving stones. I teared it up in big asymmetrical pieces and glued it on the steps and the terrace. After that, it was time for some texturing. This tomato knife came really handy to distress the XPS foam, and after that, the classic technique with the aluminum foil. These beautiful holes here were made by one of my fairy assistants. Thank God he didn't move on to the rest of the building. For black prime, I mixed acrylic with Mod Podge and water and painted everything. As I said, this castle is made for monsters.
It's a place I built for all those monsters out there lurking in the shadows.
To my opinion, it needs to reflect this character. It needs to be monstrous itself. I was thinking, how am I going to do that, when I realized that if you combine stone and monster, you get one thing: gargoyles. Well, at least in my head. So I made my decision. This castle will have an epic front gate with 2 gargoyle feet and gargoyle wings on the terrace. I am using air dry clay to sculpt the feet. After a small research that I did, I found that there are multiple types of gargoyles. Some are very primitive, some are quite elaborate. Since my sculpting skills are below basic, I decided to go for the primitive version. Simple feet with 3 toes. I textured the clay using a toothbrush and created some cracks with my X-Acto knife to make it look more old and weathered. Then I noticed that there is room for extra detail in my front arch, so I thought I can add this eye, which is marked on the flags and the board. I am using again air dry clay.
Is this your cat?
And here is my associate, which wants to add some holes to the design. I am not sure that there is room for holes here. We disagreed on this matter and he left really offended for 3 whole seconds before starting chasing a fly in the room. So I got the chance to finish the eye undisturbed. Developing the idea of the front gate, I thought there should be a pavement right in the middle of the 2 statues to make the whole thing look more solid. But when I started working on it, I realized that the door wouldn't open. Of course. So I decided to quit that idea and leave it as it is.
That's the way it has to be.
But I couldn't. Since I have imagined it with the pavement, I just couldn't see it without one. So I added 2 layers of carbon at the base to get the necessary depth to place my paving stones in a way that they weren't messing with the door. Now for the craziest idea that I had in this project. I made the gargoyle feet, but they were missing a very important element. The nails. Without the nails, they kind of look a little froggy. So I was moving around my garden the other day when one of my rose trees got me. And I thought, wow, those thorns are the perfect nails for tiny gargoyle feet. So here I am, performing a microsurgery in order to attach the thorns on the feet. That wasn't easy at all, but I think it was worth it. I really like the result. And with this tiny detail, the feet don't look like frog feet anymore. Moving on making the wings. I made a simple drawing to use as a blueprint and transferred it 4 times on a sheet of warbler. Warbler is a thermoplastic that can be formed in any shape after heating it. I cut 4 wings out of it that I think they look more like shark fins. But I cut deeper the bottom line and I think they improved a little. I am using pieces of wire to form the nerves inside the wings. What I intend is to create a sandwich with 2 pieces of warbler and 5 pieces of wire between them. Then working with my heat gun, I am forming the shape of the wing. I haven't used warbler before, so I'm moving slowly and carefully so I won't burn it. At the end, I got a really nice wing, I think. I am very happy on how it turned out. I don't know if my friend will like the idea of a castle with wings, but...
Better to beg forgiveness than ask permission.
That's right. After I formed the membrane of the wings, I moved on creating the bones. I am using epoxy clay to form the 2 main bones that are at the edges of the wings. After the epoxy clay was completely dry, it was time for positioning. Most probably, the castle after each game will be stored somewhere, in a box I guess, or a bag. Therefore, I made 2 holes in the terrace and glued XPS foam below them so the wings can assembled and also removed from the castle easily. That way storage won't be a problem. Moving on to the back side of the building. I have made a huge opening at the back wall as the original design for the monsters to move around easily. So I thought it would look rather nice to add a classic wooden gate. Well, not the door, the front thing, which I don't know how it's called. I googled, but I can't find the name for this part. Please let me know if you know it. So I used crafting wood, I textured it with the small knife and made a tiny, that thing with no name. I found in my stash a tub of girly 3D stickers I had bought for some other project and never used them. These tiny plastic balls were probably meant to simulate pearls, but in this case served perfectly as the rusty nails of the wood joints. I finally reached the point where all the constructions and the building was done, so time to move to the coloring. First of all, I black primed and textured all my extra elements. This is light stucco, and I have been totally in love with this material from the moment I discovered it. It's actually stucco, but it has a texture like mousse and, as the name suggests, is extremely light. It is used the same way like the regular stucco, but it will dry faster and you can go and paint straight away on it without using any primer. I mixed it with water and got a creamy paste that I could apply with a brush on my warbler and my plastic surfaces. Then I let it dry just a little to get thicker and treated it with my toothbrush to get a stone texture. And when it dried off, I finished with black prime. After that, I glued the nameless wooden gate accessory and the base of the castle, and it was time for painting. I made the first layer using light grey with the stone effect acrylic, and I painted my castle and all the accessories. Second layer on the steps and the terrace with the darker grey mixed with deep brown to make them look a little more dirty. I made a watery mix, applied with the brush and then wiped it softly to make it blend with the previous layer. Then I painted randomly some stones white and black to have variety on the color shades. It looks a little bit like a harlequin like this, but it will get better. I am reaching again for my beloved light stucco. This time I'm creating a grey paste that I will use to actually plaster the whole building. I am applying it with a brush at the joints on the floor and the steps and wiping it out with a wet sponge. I am careful not to put too much. I don't know how the egg carton will behave if it's soaked with that. With the XPS though, there is not such issue, so I'm getting messy. Then I did a little manicure, I painted the nails black and glued the feet and the eye in their permanent places. I made the same mix as black prime, but in an extremely watered version, and I black washed everything. And after that, using white acrylic, I started applying dry brush on every surface. I'm using a regular brush, like the ones I paint my walls. I have concluded that this type of hard brushes work better for me. I love seeing the transformation after applying black wash and dry brush. It's one of those processes that you get to see the results immediately. After dry brushing, I wondered if I was done with painting, but I was getting the feeling that the castle looked like a brand new old castle, as if it was too shiny. So I decided to use pastels to make it look a little more dusty and moldy. I don't know if you can tell the difference from the camera, but the right side looks a little bit more natural. The building is done, so I am moving on painting the doors. I am applying a first layer of deep brown metallic color on the whole surface, and I'm using the same color to paint this tiny bird. It's a nice detail. After that, I gave the nameless wooden gate thing a brown color, and as a final touch I painted the nails with the same deep brown metallic, which I actually made by mixing a bright copper metallic color that I have with some drops of regular brown acrylic. And I also used it to paint the details on the doors. Last prop of the building, the flags. I used 2 skewers to create the flagpoles and fabric to create the fabric. I cut my little flags and wrapped them around the skewers. I then applied a lot of crafting glue so they maintain their shape. I gave on each of them a ripple and let them dry. The result when they dried off was excellent on the one side, but the other,
Oh, it doesn't look good.
where the fabric was touching the surface beneath, the glue made a clearly visible film that I couldn't remove.
It's hopeless, absolutely hopeless.
Well, I got a little frustrated at first, but then I thought I can add another layer and it will be fine. And indeed, it turned out just fine. I then trimmed all the edges and using a black marker made the outline. For the rest of the design, I used also some white acrylics and... okay, my sketching skills are a matching pair to my sculpting skills, and they both are...
Inexperienced? Oh, they stink.
I can only say that I did my best. On the other hand, with the XPS foam I feel much more comfortable, so I made 4 tiny rings to add as the details on the flagpoles. I painted them and my flags were done. If I do this, you can't see how bad my drawing is. Final stage. There is too much grey here. I am going to add some aggressive, crawling green vines. I normally use twine to create my vines, but in this case I am using thin wire. I would like to give them more angular shapes. Now this is a messy part. The general idea is that I am trying to wrap and glue at the same time this green hairy thing around the wires. This is the first not so successful attempt, but it got better, and I got the aggressive vines that I wanted. The wire worked perfectly as I was placing them on the castle, so I shaped them in the way I wanted and glued them with hot silicone. I even used the wire itself to secure them in place. So here we are at the end of this project. All the props are ready and, most important, removable. So I assembled everything and the monstrous castle for the monsters of the dark world was complete. Let's have a proper look. What do you think of my gargoyle castle? You think my friend will like it? Do you like it? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you great crafting adventures. See you next time!